How's it going, everyone? I wanted to address an issue that I've left off the table for a long time just because it can be very sensitive, but I think something came up that made it worth talking about. And what made it came up and worth talking about is I saw that Antonio Buehler was put into a PowerPoint presentation from a police officer in Austin, and he was labeled as a sovereign citizen. And if you're not familiar with who Antonio is, he is a well-educated man who uh, was basically a victim of police brutality, and that event led to him creating this thing called the Peaceful Streets project. And since that time, it has provided a lot of people for opportunity to record police. So generally speaking, what he did with the Peaceful Streets project is a great thing, and it's done a lot of good for helping people to wake up and know what they can do to help fight police abuse and corruption. But it appears that the police in this case have tried to smear him in what I believe to be a very dangerous way. Uh, this officer made this slideshow, and among the labels he put on him, he said sovereign citizen. If you're not familiar with the sovereign citizen movement, it's a branch term. It's an oxymoron because someone who's a sovereign is not a citizen. A citizen's not a sovereign. A sovereign is an entity or person that has no rulers. It's the ultimate master. A citizen has a master, is a person or an entity that is ruled. So there's some irony to that, but the point of the label is that police use that to say that is a type of right-wing extremism in their view. And the sovereign citizen movement can be characterized by people who often want to use what are, technically frivolous legal arguments to try to say that they are their own sovereign. And as far as U.S. law is concerned, yeah, those tactics don't work. Sorry. Using the English common law and other types of things with, the missing 13th Amendment and nobility titles and all this other stuff, 14th and 16th Amendments, not being legally passed. Doesn't matter whether or not any of these points they may make are true in reality. They can be 100% true in reality in terms of the history of it. But that's not what the courts rule on, and the courts have consistently rejected all those arguments. So as great as it may be to say, oh, hey, I don't have to, necessarily pay taxes for certain things, or, the government's creating these secret accounts for people and we have to be able to get them because they're really some sort of corporation, holding offshore accounts. Sorry, I mean, even if it was 100% true, guess what? The courts just do not rule on that, and there's a huge stock of cases that you can find on it. A group that I don't like at all, but I'll say they have a great stock of it, is the ADL, Anti-Defamation League. They're horrible, for a bunch of reasons, but they actually do have a good database of these cases, and I have that document. And it's true. These arguments are just frivolous, and what happens is that people who are often caught up in the sovereign citizen concepts are people that try to buy these kits where they get their own, sovereign license plate and specialty documents that have this legalese that, somehow frees them from the federal government's ways. I mean, but we all know in reality the federal government just seems to do whatever it can get away with in terms of destroying rights, even ones that actually are enumerated in the Constitution or held up by courts. The executive seems to abuse it. But the scary part about all this, now that you have an understanding of the actors and the labels, is that police officers often go through and categorize in their database people who are sovereign citizens. I've personally seen this because I've been a part of those presentations on the receiving end, having worked in public defense. And it's scary because the police officers treat anybody who has this label like, a general terrorist. They dehumanize them with their language. From what I've seen, I've taken extensive notes on this. They say things which are not necessarily true, but they say it to animalize people. They'll say stuff like, oh, if you're a sovereign citizen, they think they have a right to smack around their family like chattel. They say that, basically that they're, kind of like brutes, and the way that, and I'm actually using quotes from what police officers have actually said when I was at these presentations. And, the general sum is that police treat sovereign citizens like a dangerous animal or a dangerous terrorist abroad. They really do have a fear of them. And the way it's presented is, from this background, let's say like, oh, since 1990, there's been 54 law enforcement officers who've been killed by right-wing extremists, Pretty sure a lot more have been killed by police, but, they couch it from that thing of, oh my gosh, like, you could be next, your family's next. And they talk about things, that some people do who are in the sovereign citizen movement, like file false liens, file frivolous or false lawsuits, to hurt the credit of people. And they drum up all this fear, and they make police say, oh my gosh, if someone's labeled a sovereign citizen, I need to have my gun out ready to go the second that I see them, because they could kill me at any moment's notice. It's basically like the, terrorist under every rock mentality when it comes to this. And it's pretty sick. It's pretty sick because of the dehumanization aspect. And also because of the lack of reality. When I actually asked an officer about this who's presenting, I asked the officer, wouldn't that make the founding fathers terrorists? They tried to create their own system of law and stuff like that. He's like, oh, what did they want? They just wanted to create, a more fair, freer country with law. And like, sovereign citizens just want anarchy, using that term out of context and definition. But the point is that the people who are promoting this, that is promoting the sovereign citizen, like anti-terrorist presentation materials to law enforcement offices, they treat it like as if they're jihadis ready to blow up themselves and kill people. And there's a couple instances where there is some violence they try to parade to a part of it, but really it's technically small compared to most other types of attacks. But bring it back now. The issue here is that police using that label on someone who isn't. Antonio's not, as far as his spouse believes. He's a voluntarist, an agorist. He's someone who wants peace through voluntary transaction. But he doesn't want to create a separate legal system like sovereign citizens often do. They want to, either rely on a separate type of legal system that they believe is true, or they want to create a whole new one. I've seen the reports about different alternate justice systems that have been created within the branch of sovereign citizenship. And when someone is labeled this and put this way, it's bad. It's a terrible thing. It's like it'd be like saying this person is a Muslim extremist ready to blow up themselves for Allah. That's the level of seriousness that the catchphrase of saying sovereign citizen is to police, generally. Those who have been informed on this type of right-wing extremism. So I think it's important for people to know that there's a difference between being a voluntarist and being a sovereign citizen. First, of course, is that one doesn't want any sort of government law, and the other, sovereign citizen, that is, to distinguish here, they are either relying on or want to create some sort of new type of legal jurisdiction that involves some sort of government, automatic mandatory rulers. Completely different from agorism, voluntarism. So if you're a police officer and you Google this and you found this, you should take note, because there's a huge difference between those two, and you shouldn't label somebody incorrectly. And to those who have looked into sovereign citizen arguments, you should be warned. They're largely bunk. Sorry, there's nothing more to say about that, but largely bunk. They're not going to be held up in court, and usually if someone gets a favorable ruling, it's because the courts don't want to deal with it. At a trial court level, there is a time and money scarcity of resources. If someone's trying to make all these crazy arguments and they had a small civil fine or something like that, courts can be like, okay, just throw it out, because we can't deal with a $50 or $100 fine, and this person wants to argue this and this and this and this, and it's going to take up the court's time, and the court has to actually address it. Even if it's frivolous, they're going to have to actually address it. So that happens often, and then people go and say, oh, look, see, it worked. But no, it didn't. Guess what? There's other ways you can get a case dismissed. I know. Been there, done that. So keep in mind, there's a big difference between exercising existing legal rights that the government recognizes and these types of legal arguments that have been proven time and time again to be frivolous, fraudulent, or just fake, just unwarranted. And of course, filing false liens and things like that, it's a bad idea. That'll get you in a lot of trouble. That'll definitely get the government's attention. And police. I mean, if there's anyone who watches this and you're a police officer, please have some common sense and do not conflate sovereign citizen people with people that are libertarian or voluntarist or agorist or anarchist or whatever. They're not the same at all. Totally different ideologies, totally different beliefs, and totally different demographics. Sovereign, I'm sorry if you were into this. This is just a harsh statistical reality. Statistical reality. Sovereign citizen movement literature attracts mostly those who have been convicted of a felony, who come from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, who haven't finished high school. I know I've worked with people who have done that. I've worked with people who have wasted their money on these things, and that's just reality. They get suckered into it. And it's just the case law is totally against it. There's ways that you could obviously kill the court's time and get them to maybe throw something out potentially, but the validity of an argument as far as being accepted generally by certain courts, that's a whole different story. You need appellate rulings, and there's not going to be any appellate rulings upholding any of these, straw man holding accounts from the Federal Reserve Act, or missing 13th Amendment, or 14th and 16th Amendments not legally being passed, or nobility titles, being unlawful for esquires and lawyers, stuff like that. There are some arguments that could be made within that vein, but they're not coming from the same bases as, as the common sovereign citizen talking points. And I hope that also, if anybody is watching this, no matter police or not, if you think that, being pro-liberty makes you, a terrorist, you should probably disabuse yourself of that notion. Someone who wants liberty, who wants peaceful trade and interactions among people, to be free, that everybody should be allowed to live as they want as long as they're not hurting anybody, that's not someone that wants to go blow themselves up or murder people. And, there's been a lot of hot air that's built this up, and then police have just capitalized on a couple of instances and put it together, to make it seem like as if there's this crazy group of violent people ready to murder everybody, and the second that they, say, I want to remain silent, oh, that's a sovereign citizen. No, it's someone exercising their rights. Sorry about that. That's not what's happening. And that's the scary part, is the police departments are effectively turning people who actually exercise their rights into like this moment of like, oh, red flag them, they're a sovereign citizen. They're saying they want to not talk to us. They said they want their lawyer. They must be a terrorist. They must be a sovereign citizen. It's like, no, sorry. Guess what? It's a big difference in ideology, big difference in terms of actions, in terms of outcomes. And you really need to learn and understand what those differences are if you're going to consider yourself a person of integrity. That's for sure. At a minimum. If you want to consider yourself a real person of integrity, you can get out of the system of robbing and raping through the fiat or the command of government. That would be even better. But if you're not going to be there yet, and you're like, how can I have more integrity and I still want to be a cop? You could start with not treating everybody like a terrorist, respecting rights of people to be free from government intervention, and not enforcing victimless activity. That'd be a great start. But I hope that this does not continue. I will certainly be monitoring the situation. And of course, if this happens in my area, I will definitely be on that. That's not happening. Nobody's going to get falsely labeled as that kind of bullcrap around me. Because that's serious. When somebody says that's as bad as being red flagged by the FBI or, for, oh, you're a subversive terrorist. Like, it's that bad. If in the police world, sovereign citizen is to them what, jihadist is to the FBI or the CIA. So I hope that this gets resolved quickly and that this officer is reprimanded immediately for doing this maliciously. Take care, everyone. Talk to you later.